A lack of information around addiction and mental health issues has led to a lot of confusion. Heroes in Recovery is here to set the record straight and break the stigma through the power of storytelling and by celebrating the heroic efforts of those who walk this road of recovery every day. Our movement is built on the personal journeys of survivors, shining a spotlight on the disease of addiction and creating a global community of support. Go to heroesinrecovery.com to share your story, read hundreds of others, or join us for a 6K race. Together, we can break the stigma.
That Sober Guy podcast contains adult content, merciless truth, and emotional nudity. Listener discretion is advised.
Yo, what's up? Thanks for tuning in today. Thanks to Humans for bringing us in. And thanks to you, as always, for supporting the show. It's always an honor to bring you Sober Guy Radio up here in Northern California. So thank you to everybody for listening, for supporting the recovery movement, for playing your own part, and really honored to be a part of it myself. Now, I want to start this episode by wishing my beautiful little girl, Lucy, a happy birthday. She turns 7 May 5th. And she's an amazing little girl. She got character, plenty of love in that little heart of hers, and she melts Daddy's heart if you can't tell. So I just want to wish her a great day. Daddy loves you so much, baby, and I hope you have an amazing birthday. On to announcements for the day today. One of the tools that I like to use is Transitions Daily. It's a daily AA email, and it's delivered right to my inbox. And it's a great way for me to start my day. It takes me about 5 minutes to read. And it really is one of my favorite tools. It's simple and it's right to the point, and it gets my mind going for the day, and it gets emailed directly to me. So I don't have to do any work. Sometimes I can be a lazy ass, and I'm sure everyone out there can feel that at some point. But this is it's perfect. So if you go to dailyaaemails.com, you can get more information, and you can sign up, and you can find out how you can get that emailed directly to your inbox. All right, today's guest today is a friend of mine, TJ Woodward, and really stoked to talk to him. We hung out a little bit when I was out in Nashville at the recovery, at the Foundations Recovery Conference out there, Innovations in Recovery, and we got to chat a little bit and connect. He's also from the Northern California area, I believe out in San Francisco, General Bay area. And TJ is a spiritual author. He's an inspirational speaker, awakening coach, and addiction counselor. And he's helped countless people through his simple yet powerful teachings. And we're going to talk a bit about some of those today. He's the founding minister and spiritual director of the Awakened Living Spiritual Community, and also serves as spiritual care counselor at Foundation San Francisco intensive outpatient treatment program. He's in a private practice as a spiritual counselor and awakening coach, and he also hosts Awakened Living TV and Awakened Living Radio, and he's the author of a book, Conscious Being, Awakening to Your True Nature, and also working on a second book at this time, which I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about too. So, TJ, man, it's great to have you on the show today. I appreciate you coming on, and thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you, Shane. I'm so happy to be here and in this conversation about recovery, one of my favorite topics. And yeah, it was great connecting with you at the conference. So I'm really looking forward to talking today.
Yeah, how about the conference, man? Let's start there real quick, man. What a great time, and like just some phenomenal people in recovery and in the recovery industry that you get to connect with and meet with and hook up and really make some great connections. And man, I learned a ton while I was there too. That's one thing that I enjoyed in the last couple of ones that I've been to, is the amount of different information and personalities and all the good stuff going down, man. How was your time?
Oh, it was amazing. I'm just so grateful for all the work Foundations is doing. I've been working for Foundations since 2008. Took a few years off and was at another program, but back to Foundations now for 3.5 years. So I'm so impressed with really the level of care and the level of passion that people at Foundations have. And it just seems like that's what gets attracted at all these conferences. people come from all over the world to really be with and be dedicated and in conversation about how we can continue to enhance treatment of addiction and continue to serve more and more people.
Yeah, definitely. The whole Foundations team and just that whole vibe there, just you kind of touched on it. There's something that's so authentic about it, and because it is authentic, but it's very real. And so I think personally, I think that's why a lot of people connect to it. But I know from meeting different people and being around different organizations and stuff, Foundations is the real deal, and they actually genuinely do care, and it's just one of the coolest things to be involved with them. So now you are out in San Francisco at Foundation San Francisco, the Outpatient treatment program. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, we opened our program here in San Francisco about 3.5 years ago, and I was blessed to be right in the beginning opening the program. And, we have, of course, outpatient programs throughout the country, and I'm so blessed to be able to do spiritual care. I also started and run our LGBT track. Obviously, in the Bay Area, there's a big need with that particular population with our community, so I'm grateful to serve that as well. And, I really love Foundations because, on our business card, it says holistic integrated treatment. Mm-hmm. And I actually know that we really provide that, really treating the whole person and each person as an individual. So I love everyone that I work with at Foundations, and so incredibly grateful to be able to, really serve and connect with clients every single day that I'm there.
When you say spiritual director, spiritual care counselor, can you elaborate a little bit on kind of what that entails from the more spiritual perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. As a matter of fact, that's my second book that I'm working on. I told you before we started recording that I just finished proofing and editing 8 out of the 11 chapters today and sent them off to the editors. So
nice,
I'm really
man.
feeling.
Congrats!
Really,
I know that's just like I haven't done a book, but I can imagine the amount of work and energy and time that goes into something like that. So congrats on that. That you're one step closer, I guess, right?
Yeah, thank you. And so this focus in my second book is about the spiritual aspect of addiction and the spiritual aspect of treatment and recovery. So for me, fundamentally, what spirituality means is a connection with that essential self. It's a deep connection with ourself and others. And, in the work that I've done over the years, and certainly in my own recovery of now 30 years, the fundamental piece that seems to be a common denominator, one of the 3 root causes, I'm writing about the 3 root causes of addiction through the spiritual lens, and one of them is spiritual disconnected. Being spiritual disconnected. So a big part of recovery is connecting with something spiritual. Now, for some people, that might mean a higher power. For other people, that might mean more of an inner journey. So I really meet people where they're at and recognize that there's a physical, mental, and emotional aspect to addiction and recovery. And then there's also this spiritual question, which is about connection. It's about life purpose. It's about, mindfulness and being able to deeply connect again with ourselves, because to me that self got lost somewhere along the way, and addiction even furthered that disconnection.
One of the questions that I hear often is when we talk about spirituality, or you mentioned it, a higher power, how do you kind of advise people, or how do you help them work through somebody who might have an issue with God or with a higher power, or with whatever that spiritual connection is? Like I said, I think that's definitely can be a problem for some people. So how do you kind of approach that?
Well, absolutely. And I think there's some confusion about the difference between religion and spirituality. So
you nailed that. That's for sure.
So when I meet with someone, this isn't really about me and my perspective. This is about them and their perspective. So I ask right away, what exposure have you had to religion? Mm-hmm. What was that like for you? And then what is spirituality? And is there a difference? And then they, for themselves, define what that difference is. And then the third question, of course, is, based on what you just said about spirituality, is that something that would help you in your recovery? And I think when people separate the religious piece out, obviously there are people that still want to maintain a religion. I would say most of the clients I work with aren't necessarily wanting to connect with religion, but certainly are wanting to connect with spirituality.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Absolutely. It's huge. I know for me, it's a huge part of my day to day, a huge part of the recovery too. And when you're able to separate religion from spirituality and kind of get a general understanding that they're not the same, man, you can really make some great progress. Now, you had mentioned that, that you have, you said 30 years, I believe, 30 years in recovery. Take us back a little bit, man. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Where did your life in addiction start, and then how did you kind of pull out of that?
Well, it's, if I go back and do a little bit of the long story, when I was 7, I remember having a physical sensation of closing off. I remember just shutting down and building armor around my heart. And I walked around that way from 7 until 13 when I discovered pot and alcohol. And that was like the greatest relief imaginable. And I got sober when I was 20. So, I had a good 7 years of drinking and using. And toward the end, it got really, really challenging. And when I got sober, I recognized that drinking and drugs were never the problem. They were always the solution to a problem. Yeah. The only problem is they quit working. And I know we've heard that over and over and over again, right?
Yeah.
So it's a really different paradigm for recovery because we take away that solution and what's left. So that's, a short version of my recovery story.
Tell us about the book that Conscious Being. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's actually really exciting time. I'm just had it republished and I'm relaunching it. It's available on June 4th. A lot of people have read the book Conscious Being, and it's really about a person's own journey into awakening. And I wrote it. It was published 2 years ago. And a lot of people have read the book and they said, I really love these spiritual concepts and I love what you're talking about, but how do I apply it to my daily life? Yeah. So I partnered with a good friend of mine, Dr. Adriana Popescu, and we created, at the end of each chapter, we created reflective exercises, journaling questions, and some interactive processes that people can do to really bring the spiritual principles to life. So that's going to be out on June 4th. I'm really grateful for that. So it's, it's almost like a workbook at the end of each chapter so that people can, recognize how does this apply in my life, in my daily living. And of course, I talk a little bit about addiction in the book, but it's primarily open to all people who are wanting a deeper sense of connection and spirituality.
Yeah, that's great, man. And that's a good point you bring up too. Just about, I think you even mentioned it when you kind of took us back a little bit to, using alcohol and pot at 13. I think there's the misconception generally. I know there was for me, especially new into my recovery and trying to stay sober and trying to stay clean, that cocaine and alcohol and weed were like that was the problem. And, it was the face of the problem, but deep down there was much, deeper issues, from childhood and insecurities as an adult and the whole 9 yards, right? All of us kind of deal with a lot of similar things, just different circumstances. How do you, what's your approach or what's your thoughts on that? How do we kind of see that, alcohol, drugs is definitely an issue, but let's dig down, let's get a little deeper in there. And then how does that kind of come to light and help people really see, that's where the issue lies, I guess.
Well, Shane, now you're asking to me the really meaty questions that I'm really excited to talk about.
Good.
Because I've noticed that a lot of addiction treatment focuses on behavior and symptoms. And of course, in the West, we say bad, that, the symptom is bad. How do we get rid of it? Right. That's the whole medical model.
Yeah.
And there's something much deeper happening. And so in my new book, I'm actually writing about the 3 root causes of addiction. Through the spiritual lens, I recognize there's a physical, mental, and emotional aspect, but I've come up with unresolved trauma, spiritual disconnection, and toxic shame as the root causes. Now, that shame, of course, is a sense of brokenness, and I write about how we develop core false beliefs about ourselves and the world, and based on that, then we're out in the world trying to fix that externally, and that is, by its definition, addiction. So when people come into recovery, this is about helping us go back and look deeply into our past and into the ways that we've developed the strategies to deal with this sense of brokenness. My friend calls addiction the great ache. And I just love that because it's great ache that's wanting to be fixed. And, people come into recovery and we're so used to looking outside of ourselves for the solution that sometimes we can do that with recovery then there comes a point where it's like, oh, this is really about me and my own inner journey. And to me, that's inherently spiritual.
Yeah, definitely. And that's it's a difficult thing to do. I know it was difficult for me to address that personal responsibility, that taking responsibility, right, for even past things that happened or went on. And you mentioned it, the unresolved trauma. Those types of things can lead to that victim mentality. And that's the way that I kind of approached things for a long time in my own life. And I'm sure there's some folks out there listening who can relate to that. That doesn't work. Or I have yet to meet anybody that has worked. Let me put it like that. And, that was one of the biggest hurdles was once I was able to kind of get over that and start to see, just what you're talking about, TJ, just about dealing with that and realizing that it comes from within. It doesn't come from, it's not external. I can't blame everything on the external circumstances. It starts inside. Man, some huge strides were made, and by all means, I'm not saying I got it all figured out at all, but, there's a start there and you can start to build on that. How important is that, that you see, and obviously you've written about it. I'm sure you have a lot of conversations about it. How does that unresolved trauma piece, or what does it mean to you?
Well, I love exactly the way you're talking about it. It's funny because, having just proofed these chapters today, I write a whole section on victim consciousness. And I want to be really clear. I'm not saying that people were not victims at some point in their life.
Sure.
The issue is we take on the idea, as you said, that I'm a victim in the world. And that's very different. The traumatic experience happened, especially if we were children, we were victims to it. The issue is, though, we create a consciousness of being a victim, and then the world continues to seem to be happening to us. And, until we're 100% accountable for our own reality and that it does happen from the inside out, nothing really shifts. The way I say it is, if we're trying to fix things in the outer realm without doing the inner work, it's just like changing deck chairs on the Titanic. The ship is going down, right? Yeah. So this is getting in there and reframing and really looking at the root causes of where this came from. And really, to me, recovery is far more about unlearning than it is about learning.
So without giving too much of the book away, because I know I'm digging a little bit here, but I want to talk about the toxic shame piece too, because I know shame and guilt was, it's always a huge thing, especially dealing with or numbing emotions with substances. What is your idea of toxic shame?
Well, the difference between guilt and shame, and I'm certainly not the first person to say this, I'm thinking of the preeminent shame person, John Bradshaw, who was around when I got sober in the 80s. Guilt is I've done something that I feel is wrong, and shame is I feel like I am wrong. I feel like I'm broken. And if I'm walking around with the belief that I'm not lovable, no one's going to love me enough to fix that. And I'm going to unconsciously be attracted to and attract people to confirm that core false belief. So that toxic shame, the reason I like the term toxic shame is it's incredibly toxic to our system. Yeah. I think it causes disease and it causes all kinds of difficulties internally and externally. And until we get in there and really own it, and we work with guilt and shame in a very different way, right? Guilt is, if I stole $500 from you, I pay it back. It's fine. Shame is, I feel broken because of that. We need to create a safe space to be able to bring that forward and to recognize, reparent ourselves in some ways. That's really the second part of my book, is how we break the cycle of addiction, starting with creating a safe space internally and externally.
So when we talk about trying to stay sober, right, trying to stay clean, there's a lot of different components to that. Obviously, it's definitely a lifelong process. How important is the people that surround us? Like how important is it for us to surround ourselves with people with, they don't necessarily have to be, sober, I guess, because I have like members of my family, they're not sober, but they're also not alcoholics. Right. So there's that kind of general line, I guess there. But that's always the tough thing I hear is that, you come in and you have friends and family and, you have environments that you're, that you've been parts of for a long time. And now all of a sudden, like, not only do I not have that tool to use of alcohol or drugs to kind of take away the anxiety or the pain or whatever it is, now I'm like being thrown into this whole new environment. And I really feel awkward. So how do you kind of adjust to that and start to find yourself, I guess?
Well, I think you're speaking to something that's so crucial and fundamental, and that's creating a community of people that are supportive. That's why 12-step programs work so brilliantly. They're everywhere, and there are people in that room that really want to help you. I work with, a lot of clients that love 12-step programs. I work with some that don't. And, the way I say it is, if that doesn't resonate with you, some place where you can build, a community of people that will lift you up.
Yeah.
We have options now. We have Refuge Recovery, which is incredible. It's a Buddhist approach to recovery. We have Smart Recovery. We have LifeRing. We have a lot of places people can go. I mean, I know people that have gotten sober in a spiritual community that's not based around recovery, but it's based around on living a spiritual life, and they find that connection and that intention to live a better life, and that works for them as well. But I think fundamentally, finding community is really important.
Yeah, I agree, man. It's so huge that human connection and in community. I know for myself, I've learned how to communicate in that community, and that's been huge for me. Because I like a lot of other alcoholics and addicts, yourself probably included, I'm sure, has experienced at some point in this where you want to shut down and you want to just, you just kind of want to be alone and you don't know how to communicate. There's other people out there that are going through the same shit that we're going, through, or that we've been through. So I want to first tell people that you're not alone. That's such a huge part. And secondly, whether it's a 12-step, whether it's a church, whether it's a community inside of your own community, a group, whatever it is, man, just find something out there that you can hold on to and start to talk to other people about. It's huge. TJ, what's one of your favorite things that you just love about the work that you do? Because it's so important for us to be passionate about the work we do. I mean, I love that piece of it when people say, man, I love getting up every morning because I just love what I do. It doesn't even feel like a job. My guess is you kind of have some of those same feelings, and correct me if I'm wrong, but what do you love about what you do?
Well, I love everything that I do, and I'm so incredibly grateful for that. I had a really dark period in my life around 20 years sober where I had kind of lost touch of what was important to me. I really wasn't in a community. I had gotten off track again. I was really into my business and my home and my partner and my car, and that became so much more important to me. Yeah. And so I went through this kind of dark night of the soul experience, and in the midst of that, I got really clear that I wanted to dedicate the rest of my life to helping people awaken. And so I had this incredible shift that happened, and that was about 10 or 11 years ago. And from that moment, I went to ministerial school and I started a spiritual community and then started working with foundations in 2008. What I love about this work is watching the light come back in somebody's eyes. When someone comes into treatment, they feel broken, they look broken, their life may be falling apart on the outside. What I notice, though, that's the common denominator of people getting sober is there's a spiritual bankruptcy that happens. There's a flatness to them. There's a deadness to them. And when they come into treatment and I get the privilege of working with them, doing groups and meeting with clients one-on-one and watching that light come back into their eyes, and then we get to reflect that back to each other. There is nothing like that. There is nothing else like that in the world. And I'm just so incredibly blessed, and I feel so grateful to be doing this work.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Yeah, that's like the best thing when just somebody just gets it, and you're like, wow, it's freaking cool, man. Life-changing right there, man. Life-changing stuff. So now you had mentioned that you're an advocate and you work a lot with the LGBT community. Can you talk a little bit about that? We've had a couple of emails actually not too long ago that had interest in that community and wanted some more information on just kind of relating to that, I guess, what it's like to be gay and be in recovery, like what, just asking some general questions. So I would love to hear your take on that and any resources that are out there that people might be able to reach out to.
Yeah, absolutely. When we look at, as I'm talking about, the 3 root causes of addiction through this spiritual lens, if you look at toxic shame, unresolved trauma, and spiritual connection, pretty much if you're born and you're an LGBT person in our culture, you're going to have all 3 of those, right? Yeah. when you live in a culture where not everyone, obviously, and there's more and more acceptance, but a great deal of people are still saying there's something wrong with you. You sometimes hear God says there's something wrong with you. There's religious abuse that comes with that. People get disenfranchised, disowned from their families. And so, there is a level of shame, and it's very toxic that, like we already talked about, that comes with gay folks, that we have to work through that. That's why I'm so incredibly grateful that we were able to start an LGBT track here in San Francisco, and also in our residential program at Michael's house in Palm Springs. It's a place, people come in they're 1 day a week we're dedicated to talking about things specifically related to LGBT issues. And it's a safe place for people to be able to talk about this shame, bring it forward, and really connect with other LGBT folks. There are a lot of resources out there now. Most major cities have an LGBT center. It's a place where you can get a lot of resources. And of course, if you're looking for treatment, there's Pride Institute that focuses on LGBT. And there, of course, is Foundations too, where we really, meet people where they're at and certainly support people in that particular community.
Yeah, definitely, man. Thanks for dropping those resources on there too. I mean, there's a ton of them out there, and like we already kind of mentioned, you just got to reach out, and they're there for you. You just got to go out and get them. And there's no shame, there's no weakness in asking for help. If anything, it just makes you 10 times stronger. I'm a firm believer in that. TJ, man, it's been really great to chat with you today. Let me ask you one last question, man, and then I'll let you go. For somebody out there listening right now who's struggling, they happen to throw this podcast on, and they don't know what to turn to. They're not really sure what to do next. Maybe you don't have an answer for them exactly that, but what kind of advice could you give them to help them in the next step?
Well, I think what you said is so crucial, to let whoever's listening right now, if you're suffering, if you're going through a difficult time with addiction, you are not alone. There are people going through it with you. There are people who have gone through it. Those of us who are sober are more than happy to support and help. My own darkness through my addiction made me so incredibly grateful to help other people. So it's really, find a community, connect with people, reach out. There's 12-step programs, there's refuge recovery, there's treatment for you. And of course now, it's a wonderful thing to have the internet. There's Facebook groups, that support people in recovery. And, there's all these amazing podcasts like yours. And the main thing is, you're not alone, and let someone help you. This is like, as you said, Shane, it can often be so isolating for people in an addiction. So let's connect, reach out. You can always reach out to me, and let's be in this conversation about how we all can support each other.
Yeah, it's good stuff, TJ. Yeah, speaking of the Facebook group, you got Sober Guy, Sober Girl Facebook group. You can go on soberguy.com and check that out there. TJ, you're at tjwoodward.com. The book, Conscious Being, and then your new book is that you're working on right now, will be coming out soon. If anyone wants to reach out to you, they want any more information, where else could they do that?
Yeah, tjwoodward.com. Also, you can reach me on Facebook. I have TJ Woodward there, an author page, and you can shoot me an email. And again, I guess the closing thought is you're not alone, and people are more than willing to help and connect.
TJ, thanks so much, man.
Thanks, Shane. This has been fun.
Thanks for listening today. Thanks to TJ for coming on. Much appreciated. Thanks to Foundations Recovery Network for supporting us. And we'll see y'all out in Nashville here pretty soon. Go to thatsoberguy.com for more information. Lucy, love you, baby girl. Happy birthday once again. Peace, love, respect. Keep your blood clean, son.